hair now.
No. Well, I mean,
No.
I am growing out the hair, but very inadvertently, more so due to laziness. Because, I mean, top of my head is pretty barren.
What are you working with up there?
I mean, you want to see it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, YouTube's going to see this.
Wait,
I'm recording right now. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Okay.
So I'm pretty thin. It's honestly pretty thin up there.
My dad has the like receding hairline. I mean, I'm ta-da, you know. But this is so much nicer, to be honest. Like just going like clean shave. You don't have to like deal with it in the morning.
And you're just trying to make me feel better. I appreciate it though.
I don't know, you know. And then it's like I feel like we both don't have awkward shaped heads.
Yeah, and we both have good shaped heads.
Yeah.
I've been told that.
Yep.
Oddly enough.
Just a good melon.
Hello and welcome to the Average Bros Gym podcast, where your fitness hosts with eerily similar names, Kory and Kory, give you life advice. I've honestly forgot the fucking intro. I didn't even have it up. No black and white takes. Yeah, walk you through fitness and health advice. No black and white takes. No polarizing. All the things. We just give you genuine advice and good conversation. And welcome to episode 9.
Wow.
Yeah. Shit, that was not. But you might notice we sound really good.
Yes.
Because we've got a new little audio mixer. So we actually are able to use 2 inputs into the same recording. So we're able to use different microphones, and here we are. Mm-hmm. That's how we talk. Kory, do you feel different now that we're doing this?
I think it's going to be interesting to like run it back in here. I was actually told just the other day, to be honest, I forgot to tell you this, that I've been getting a lot of feedback that people very much appreciate the sound of our voice. Like we're just like good speakers. And I was like, ooh, I'll take that. You know, sometimes you can like talk to somebody or you hear someone's voice just in, I don't know, they're within earshot at the coffee shop and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the most easy listening
can't
voice.
help it,
That too, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like you get someone with like a really cringy laugh sometimes too.
Well, like so
ooh.
we were Megan and I are watching Stranger Things. I saw the first season when it came out, and then I just didn't continue for like no reason. Like I wasn't like I didn't like it. I liked it, but season 2 came out and then season 3 came out.
I was gonna say, how many are there? Because I've seen them all.
4 right now.
Okay. Oh, so more.
I think there's more being made. At least one more. But so I just didn't see the 2, 3, or 4. So we started watching it, and we're on season 3 right now. And it's like the kids kind of make a leap in that like pubescent stage. So like they're kind of like awkward kind of early teens, and the kid that plays Will, like you can tell in his voice, like when he's kind of like there's a scene where he's kind of getting mad at his friends and he starts kind of yelling, and it just has that real like grindy like pubescent tone where it's like, yo, this kid is like, his voice is deepening but it's not there yet. It's like caught in that middle stage, and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad that we're 20 years back.
That's a funny thing to think about, like back when your voice was actually changing. And I feel like I don't know, would you say it's fair? Like it's more recognizable in males, like in men, that like you hear that significant tone change where it really, really drops. Like I remember all the time you'd get those random little voice cracks when you're like reading or something. It was like, you just go super high.
And
what was that?
I think our bias is just the fact that we are like boys, so we just pay attention to it more. Because like women, I honestly have no idea.
I was gonna say, I never recognized it. Like I remember being in class though, and like you would hear a guy talking and then you would hear that voice crack. I don't remember that as much with the gals in class, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. It'd be interesting to get that perspective.
Maybe we're just thinking about it because exactly. I think it's because we're dudes, we're thinking about it in like a dude way.
In a dude way.
Speaking of dude ways,
how our brains work.
I want to start each episode from now on with a question, and just like a silly question.
Oh, I like this.
But
question of the day.
I thought of this when I was driving home from work just now. And so I want to ask you this question. What is one way that you are like your dad?
Oh, that's a good one.
One way.
Oh, I'm going to take this. We always do a question.
20 minutes later.
Yeah. So good. Oh, it's funny that you asked that because I feel as though the more that I've grown up, I remember as a kid all the time, I would be compared to that of like my mom in terms of looks. But in terms of personality, very much like my dad. Very talkative, sociable, can just kind of shoot the shit with anybody. Sure. I feel like I very much get that from my father. He's very playful as well. Joking around, likes to play games, is the one to kind of always has like a little glint in his eye, just like, oh, what are you thinking? Like, what, he has got a little smirk or a good joke. So I'd say, yeah, I very much get that from my dad. That
right.
kind of playful, childlike enthusiasm for some things, and always just down to have like a good time.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's a good question. What about you?
I have a different answer. So yeah, I was driving and on the highway. I've been to Minneapolis or you're from the area, like, I don't know, I drive on 62 a lot and Highway 100. I'm over like 169, kind of like the west side of the cities, and that's just like where I live and where we work in St. Louis Park. And so driving home, I see this like hawk kind of flying over the highway. And if you kind of have driven those routes, you probably have seen these like I think they're either Cooper's hawks or red-tailed hawks. So they might be the same thing.
Big bird watcher, are you?
Yeah, yes, honestly, they're so majestic. They're so cool. So like, there's these tons of hawks, and they always kind of like perch on the street lights above the highway. And well, anyways, I was driving and I was seeing one fly, and they have these massive wingspans, and it's like, they're kind of like searching for prey. So I don't know, it's really cool, and my dad is also that way. Like, you just kind of like sit and watch like animals in nature for however long. Like if I could just sit and watch in like the wilderness and just see like deer move and like birds do things, and I could sit there and watch it for hours. Seriously.
It's funny you bring that up. Like a couple weeks back when we haven't had really much of a winter here in Minnesota this year. It's been kind of crazy, and I mean, for a lot of people, they do not mind it at all. But just a couple weeks back, Michaela and I, we were on a walk around. It's called Fish Lake, beautiful little area, and there was just like this little fresh, light snowfall that kind of just sugar coated everything on the ground, all the trees, and it was just very quiet, peaceful. More in the evening, we went on a walk around the area with my dog Stevie. She's a little cutie. She's actually returning 3 here in February. So
I just saw her again when you brought her in. She's so cute.
She is adorable. I got a little pocket-sized pity for anybody out there listening right now.
She's a tank.
Always down for puppy play dates. Yeah, 50 pounds of just hard-hitting muscle.
She's a fullback.
She is.
Oh yeah,
100%.
She'll Mike Allstott.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very good debate. I was like either fullback or like hard hitting free safety, one of the two.
For sure.
Yeah. The lateral agility and quickness is not there for her, but like A to B straight shot speed, she'll come up and lay a thumping on you.
She's like Anderson Dejo. Terrible at coverage, but yeah, man, this guy could hit.
Oh God, yeah, she can. Watching her at like dog parks, sometimes she's a little instigator, and she'll come up and lay a thumping on some dogs, like just in a playful manner, not in anything aggressive. But anyways, we're walking around Fish Lake, and this fresh little snowfall had hit, nice and quiet and peaceful. Like if you stopped walking and you just stood there for a moment, like just eerily quiet. And you hear this little rustling over in the trees, and you just happen to glance over, and there was 5 deer that were walking through the tree line there, and it was just like how you said, where you can just take a moment to like really appreciate seeing those animals in their, I mean, more or less like natural environment. To see like a hawk, or to see, I mean, gosh, if you go up to like somewhere in, I don't know, Alaska, or you really get out in the wilderness and see them and see those creatures, that's got to be so much fun and just like fascinating. Just sit there and watch them do their animal things.
Yes, their animal things.
Do their animal things.
What are these animal things they're doing?
They're fascinating.
That is one thing I do miss about snow in the wintertime, because right now, as Kory alluded to, it is very warm. And like we had like a week of like sub-zero temps, and then it was like back to 30,
100%
plus 30 plus. So we haven't had a ton of snow this year, but I love when you have that fresh snowfall and like nothing's really moving too much, because like the animals are kind of chilling. Like there's really no bird calls. People typically aren't out as much because they're cold or whatever. Yeah. It's just that there's that muffled silence, right? Yes. There's no like the insects aren't chirping. Like there's no rustling of leaves or whatever. Like it's just that muffled quiet. And oh man, I love that. It's a winter moment.
And it's like when something does break the silence, like you hear like maybe a squirrel or some chipmunk like ruffle through the foliage, like then it's so distinct that you're immediately drawn to that. Like you hear something because it is so quiet, and you're like, oh, what is that?
The crunch of your own feet.
Yeah.
In the snow.
Oh, there's just something. That's why it just baffles me when people are like, oh, I hate winter. I'm like, actually, there's so many beautiful elements and aspects to winters, especially in Minnesota, that I feel sometimes you oftentimes forget about or don't appreciate. When, for instance, like this year, we haven't really had it. And I'm sitting here thinking like, man, I would kill to have some of those like snowy days, those snowy walks, like they're so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, before we know it, it's going to be, 100 degrees out, muggy, and hot. bill.
which is its own fun time, of course. Yeah, I don't know. Like I really do appreciate kind of that winter time. I think it makes you appreciate like summer more. You know what I mean?
So the classic Minnesotan thing to say, you got to have
Yeah.
the warm days to appreciate the cold ones, and the cold
Well,
ones to
you know,
appreciate
and,
the
well,
warm
in the
ones.
summertime, it's interesting because, like, so you know, Kory and I both been in the fitness industry for a long time, and let's tie it back into fitness.
Yeah.
You know, 10 minutes later, we, it's like in the summertime is kind of where I see that I get the most disappointed with with members slash like people you work with, um, because it's like they people work hard because they want to achieve some sort of thing for the summer, whether that's like a body type or like whatever they're trying to do. And then they get to the summertime and they're like, I'm gonna fuck off and do nothing for 3 months. And it's like people will go out more, which is fine, like live your life. Like I'm not trying to shame anybody for this stuff, but it's like you see everybody's like, I'm gonna quit, 'cause I'm gonna run this summer. I'm like, are you really gonna fucking do that though? Like you're not. You're about to run like twice a week, like maybe, and then you're gonna fall off because like whatever. And so I think that's always kind of frustrating because I see the same people back, like at the beginning of the fall, like oh yeah, like I just goofed off this summer. I'm like, yeah, why the fuck do you not keep your routine going? And it makes me upset.
I was gonna say, I
Because
feel
I'm
like you just went through an experience like this.
Well, no, like it's like I don't know. Like for me, it's like, well, I'm in the summertime. Like now, let's say, because like one of the reasons why I work out is vanity. I'm not gonna lie. I want to look good
Dude,
with the shirt off.
that's everybody though.
And so I'm like, why would I, now that the time is to wear nothing on my body, why would I stop working out? Or like, why? I think it's just like, for me, it's kind of, I always get frustrated because it's like, man, we've made so much progress over this last like several months. And then it's like, well, I don't see you because you're, every weekend you're at the cabin for 4 days, or like you're doing this and that. And like, again, I don't know, like live your life. If you have a cabin, if you have a boat, like I'm not going to knock you for utilizing those things because you only have 3 months maybe to do it. But at the same time, it's like, don't neglect your fucking fitness, because like you're going to repeat the same cycle and then you're going to quit gyms when it's really you that's not putting in the effort. And rant.
And bam.
And rant. So got my honest opinions. Hey, go to your cabin, but move, do something still. You know what I mean? Like, and don't just drink like an asshole all week.
Well, and I think that also is probably people who haven't really sat down and determined what goals that they do have, or the sacrifices that they are then willing to make to be able to achieve said goals that they believe they desire. Again, we talked about that, like with SMART goals, figuring out what's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound, all those things. But I think a lot of times people, they don't have that direction of where they want to go or why they want to get there. And then sometimes, that leads to, when you get some nicer days out, they might be a little bit more inclined to partake in the activities that they just find enjoyable. But then at the same time, like they're not progressing towards what they initially set out for, potentially, and that can kind of get you just a little derailed or sidetracked, and then they're running this vicious little cycle year after year after year. It's like, as a coach, that can be definitely frustrating, at times, but then also frustrating for the member if they're in that cycle year after year.
And again, live your life. Like I want you, essentially what we're all trying to do is like, part of what we talk about as well is like, hey, like move your body in ways that you enjoy as well. Like if you enjoy hiking, or like in the wintertime, like if you enjoy like ice skating or like skiing or like snowshoeing, whatever, like that is part of the reason why we do fitness. But at the same time, I think it's just that priority of like, okay, what do you really want? Like you can't say that your number one priority is your health and wellness if you don't act like that. So I don't know. Anyways, summer and winter, interesting times in the state of Minnesota. Very, very interesting. Because I mean, like, I imagine, and someone maybe who lives in a different state can like comment on this episode, or like email us, and like how do you do it? Like how does it work in Florida or like North Carolina or California when it's nice all year round, or nicer, quote unquote? Like how does that affect like fitness, health, and wellness? Like how does that affect exercise routines?
Ooh, I feel like you could go down a multitude of different avenues on that one. And again, depending upon what it is that you're wanting to work towards and how diligently you're going to be working towards that. Like, yeah, if you're wanting to be the world's best golfer,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're probably not going to want to spend a whole shit ton of time in a state that has like snow for 3, 4,
Right.
5 months
Yeah, I
out of
can
the year.
think of
Like
some
you're going to
people
want
right
to,
now that yeah.
yeah, move, like relocate, like if that's the case, or vice versa. Like if you're doing a bunch of winter sports, like yeah, Arizona's probably not the best spot to be able to participate in.
And
Said,
got the Coyotes.
well,
You got that
fair.
NHL franchise. Yeah.
So I mean, you got that aspect to it. I mean, then you get like you can go into the aspect of like seasonal affective disorder, and like you get like lack of sunlight and how that impacts you like mentally and emotionally, and how that's going to impact your training. And there are a lot of different factors to consider from like an element standpoint, I guess. But at the same time, I think if you're have your sights set on whatever it is that you want to achieve, like you're not necessarily going to let the elements like impact you or affect you, that it's going to drastically hinder your success in that endeavor. Like I think the individuals that really want it and are willing to put in the work, they're going to get there regardless. Like I don't know why this just popped in my head. Like Francis Ngannou, for anybody who doesn't know, he was right now was the heavyweight champion in UFC. Went over to boxing to fight Tyson Fury, but I can't remember exactly where he came from. But it was, oh gosh, I should look this
Nigeria,
up.
perhaps?
Is that what it is? Yeah, but I mean, just like the slums had no even like hope to be able to get out of that situation that he found himself in. That, I mean, no fault of his own. He was just born and raised there. But like, again, you get that environment, and I'll be damned, he finds a way to, pursue his goals and his career aspirations, and like he made it happen. I think that can be said regardless of like, where and there is an aspect of, opportunity that is presented to you or that you have available to you. There is that as well. But I think, again, you have these examples of individuals that have fought through and persevered through their given circumstances and whatever environment that they do find themselves in, to still ultimately get and achieve the things that they set their mind to, which I think is, again, qualities that and stories that we just that resonate with us, that they fought through that adversity and that hardship and still achieved that. So again, environment, weather, all those things, it's like the people that really want that. And there's an aspect of luck and things like that go into it. But I mean, they're going to get there, at least in my mind anyway.
Aspect of luck in everything too.
There is.
I mean, like that's a big force in the world, and people don't kind of realize that.
Yeah.
Because like I think like, and I've said this before too, is like, oh yeah, luck is when like preparation meets opportunity, which is like, I mean, true in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there is just fucking luck. I mean, like there are some times where it's like, that car's, that's zooming past you, like slams on whatever, right? Slams on its brakes, avoids a disaster. Like that's luck. You can say, there's certain things that could go wrong. So, there's always that aspect of luck. I don't even know how we got on this topic, but yeah, so there you go. So anyways, it is wintertime in Minnesota, and don't neglect your fitness this summer.
Yeah, get outside, go for a
walk. Do
walk.
both. Like you can go for a walk, you can go on your boat, but you can work out beforehand. You got to get up a little bit earlier. That's the thing. Okay, hold up. We're gonna circle it back, because a lot of time we're like, oh, there's patio season and there's happy hours and all that stuff. Well, if you got to change your routine to work out in the morning rather than at night, you can also do that. Yeah, it's going to be more challenging, but I don't know. You got to get it in. What are you going to do? Just not work out all summer?
Well, I think it just goes back to, if this is going to be a priority in your life, you're going to make the time for it. And that's I think is like a key distinction there. It's like you're not necessarily going to like find time or discover time. Like we all operate on the same 24-hour window, but if it's going to be something that is a priority, then you're going to make the time for that. Right. So yeah, if you have your mornings, which I would say probably more often than not, people, if you're going to be able to get into a fitness routine or you struggle with that, like capitalize on your morning right away. I mean, because then that's the first thing that you do is get that done. If that means, again, getting up maybe an hour early, 30 minutes earlier than what you typically do, setting that alarm. I probably heard this so many different times. Or again, you can flip it. If you're more available in the evening, then regardless of if you had a really long, shitty day at work and you had to, go through thousands of different emails and phone calls, it was super stressed, but you set that time frame at like, 8 o'clock, that's when I'm going to get my workout in. Then you can't just use the entire previous like day as like an excuse, be like, well, I'm tired and I just want to go back. It's like, well, no, fuck that. Then you said that you were going to go at 8 p.m. So then like honor your fucking commitments. Like, or are you going to continue to like bitch and moan and, just whine that you're not at the fitness level or physique that you want, or whatever the physical goal that you wanted to be able to attain? Like, if you're not going to be willing to sacrifice for it, then what are we doing here? Like, why are we sitting here having this conversation again? Like, week after week, month after month, for some people, like year after year. It's like, you've got to be the one to be able to be willing to make that change and make that sacrifice if that's truly something you want. Like, cool, work out in the morning, work out at night, who cares? Just like get it in and get after it. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
It doesn't have to be something crazy, but let's say you decide not to go to that workout that you were going to go to at 8 p.m. Let's say you do want to go home. Well, go home and get a workout. Like, move your body a little bit. You know what I mean? I think that's the case. Is like, it doesn't have to be as we try to say at the beginning of the podcast, where I messed up the lines because I forget what we're doing. I think it has to be more so of like, it doesn't have to be, I don't go to this workout I had planned, so I'm just gonna sit at home and like melt on the couch and eat like junk food. Like, you can do both. You can go home and also work out, like move your body. So I think that's kind of more so my take. I guess is just like, hey, it doesn't have to be this like black and white. It can be a compromise of both, but the point is that you're doing it right, and you're honoring that commitment to yourself. And I think that's going to help you moving forward when it gets to the summertime and there's boats involved.
when it so often is too going to come down to like, where are you currently at, and what little goals are you going to make along the way? What are those process goals like going to look like for you? Again, for someone who's just been sedentary for the last 4 years, works a desk job, and then all of a sudden they come into the gym and they're like, yeah, we're going to start fucking cranking this out like 5 days a week. And, I'm going to start doing my macronutrients. I'm going to track and log, and then I'm going to get out for my 20-minute walk and do all these other things. It's like, you are putting so much more on your plate than you even are, I think, maybe aware of that you're doing right now. And you're setting yourself up potentially for just like massive failures, which then how are you going to combat that when you're like, yet again, looking at yourself in the mirror after a day where you're like, oh, missed it again. Yeah. Oh, yep, I ate that thing that I said I wasn't going to eat because I said I was going to do my macronutrients or whatever.
Sure.
It's like, just again, wherever you are, you got to make sure that you're setting those realistic, attainable, goals for yourself. And if you're not sure, you find yourself like continuously slipping, like, yeah, then like talk to a coach, figure out like what that game plan is going to look like for you. And again, someone that's going to keep you accountable throughout that entire process, whatever that might be.
Call back to episode 4 with their goal setting.
Yeah.
It's like, if you, like you alluded to, like if you're very sedentary, all of a sudden if you're setting a goal for these 5 days a week, well then if you work out 4 days a week, you've technically failed your goal, have you not? So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, but you've worked out 4 days a week.
Yeah.
4 days this week. Like, if you're, it's like, so I give yourself credit in that regard, and especially if you're brand new, like setting your goals to get in 3 times a week. Like, you can do 5, but if your goal is like, if you're setting yourself up for like, if I don't hit 5 workouts or like 6 workouts, whatever that is, like I've failed. Well, then it's like you're giving yourself not a lot of leeway. If we're saying, well, I'm going to do 2 workouts here and like I'm going to go for a walk every week. Well, that's a much more attainable goal, and that's something where it's like, even if you don't do, like, you can also do 3. Like, you could do 2, then another one. Like, so you giving yourself a little more leeway for that.
Well, and I think a lot of times people, one thing that they struggle with is like, operating within a growth mindset. Like, one of the things that we're doing right now is a nutrition challenge at the gym, where each week they have a different eating method that they engage in, along with some other behaviors, things like, going for a 20-minute walk, hydrating, with a given number of ounces of water. But the eating methods, we have just a clean eating week where, okay, no additional sugars, you're only eating whole foods, no additives into, whatever beverages that you might do. So it's like, if you're drinking coffee, it's just coffee. You're not, throwing a bunch of other gunk in there. So that's like week 1. Then week 2 went on to macronutrients, tracking all your macros, your proteins, fats, and carbs. Week 3, it goes into like a tray method of sorts, and all to be able to just like expose you to those different eating methods, which ones ultimately work best with you and your lifestyle. And for a lot of people, they sign up for this challenge to lose weight. They want to cut down a little bit of body weight or body fat percent, and although throughout the process, if they stick with it, more often than not, they're going to start to see, results by the end of the, 4, 5, 6 weeks, however long you run the program. But there are also individuals who their weight might not change as much as what they had hoped for, or what they had envisioned for, and they might only be down after 5 weeks, like, 1, 2, maybe 3 pounds. Like maybe their body fat percent, like, ticked down a little bit, or maybe they just stayed like even keel, and they'll look at those results knowing how much work that they put in like the several weeks prior, and they're just like, oh, well, I just fucking failed. Oh, well, that was worthless. Oh, well, that was stupid. Oh, didn't work again. Nope, that doesn't work for me. And I'm just like, okay, you're just being so negative about it right now. Like, is there anything? There's not one thing over those like last several weeks that you learned that you can integrate in now to your regular like lifestyle and routine that is just one more brick in that wall leading you on your path towards whatever goal that you set for. But no, you're just going to piss that away, flush it down the drain, and be like, nope, fuck it, woe is me, I guess it doesn't work, nope, I'm just going to be stuck here. It's like, okay, well, what kind of mentality is that? Like, sit there with a growth mindset afterwards, like, what did work well, what things could I do better at? You always have to have that area of introspection and self-reflection, and go through those weeks, go through your last months, last years with a fine-tooth comb, and really take that look, that cold hard look at yourself, and be like, okay, where are areas that in which I can grow? What are some things that I did well and can look to continue to improve on? And where are some times where like, yeah, I kind of maybe slipped up a little bit there. Like, acknowledge your weaknesses as much as your strengths, and you're going to continue to grow another little brick as you continue to work your way through. But so many times people do that. They just, flush it down the toilet afterwards, and like, well, that was worthless. That was pointless. Tried strength training, didn't do shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. You did
terrible.
it for a month, and I think you maybe came like 6 times.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, fitness doesn't work for you, or
Yeah.
insert Lifetime or whatever gym that you go to. It's like, if you weren't consistent with it, what can you expect out of it? It's like, how many times have you heard that? Oh, this didn't work for me. It's like, did it? Or like, did you not stick with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. Now you're getting me heated.
Sorry. We'll move on, kind of. Well, so I wanted to talk to you about today, kind of like about, speaking of training and goal setting and things like that too, and areas where you're progressing and also failing. A little bit about kind of like your marathon that you ran, which was a couple of years ago now, I believe. And coming from a background where you weren't really, I mean, like, you ran, but not really. Not like a runner.
No.
Yeah, you would probably, Kory, you were probably doing more of a run within a CrossFit workout than anything else, or like you were doing a little OTF, like a little 2G, 2 mile action, whatever that is. Yeah. But you weren't a distance runner, and you have a little bit of a like chaotic energy to you, in like the best way. Where it's like you kind of like think of something, like, I'm gonna fucking do that, and like, you know what I mean, and you go for it, which is great, and it's like, you're gonna skydive, what? Like, it's gonna,
fun.
That was fun. So like, I don't know, walk us through this process of kind of like, okay, well, how'd you decide to do this marathon, and kind of like a little bit, maybe a little bit of that training as well, and kind of like what were the first kind of like hurdles you came through, or kind of how'd that go for you?
Ooh, so there's this is a topic of conversation that we have spoken about previously, not to any sort of length, but a lot of different areas that I want to kind of break this down. I guess initially, like you said, I have this, what I've been told is almost like like a golden retriever type energy about me.
You're a Hufflepuff.
Yeah, Hufflepuff, I guess.
You're just like a really excited Hufflepuff.
Yeah. And I've always been into health and fitness. I've always sought out physical challenges. I liked going through those longer runs or workouts, doing things that got me uncomfortable and out of that comfort zone, and whether that was in the form of CrossFit, running, and I always wanted to be able to say, on my deathbed, I did something or gave it my absolute best effort. Then, oh no, I never tried it.
Right.
Like, how many times do people say like, oh yeah, eventually I want to run a marathon, and then they never fucking do it. You could say that about so many different things, but I never wanted to be there at the end of my life wishing that I would have done something when I definitely had the opportunity, or could have made the time to get that done. And a marathon was one of those things that for the longest time I'd always heard friends of mine who had participated in marathons talk so glowingly about it, and the hardships and the struggles that they faced and the adversity that they faced throughout that training program and the process, and how much they learned about themselves being on those long runs where it's only you on those, unless you have like a training partner. A lot of those times you're doing just a run by yourself.
Music, man.
That's some next level shit. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. You know?
I mean, when I hike, like I don't listen to music, but that's like a different level of exertion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and it's a different, I think, a different environment, you know, too. Like you're out in nature, and interestingly enough, that's one thing that I'm putting on my list here for this year is to do a 50K trail run in October. We've talked about that. So again, kind of along the lines of
a little episode,
a little more over than a marathon, but you know, out in the woods and whatnot. But yeah, those individuals in my life that had done marathons, and how many, I think there's a stat out there that it's like less than 1%. I could be completely wrong about this, and we should look this up just to verify and fact check. But like, I want to say it's like,
look, if you're coming to this podcast for like accurate information, I don't know.
Like the number of people like worldwide in terms of the population that has ran a marathon is shockingly low.
Sure,
I shouldn't even say shockingly. It's 26.2 fucking miles. Like, all right, how many people actually want to just like willingly sign up to partake in that endeavor?
That's a good point.
But doing something like that where a finite amount of people have done that, gone through that, the training, the grind, the regimen and everything. So at the time, this would have been a couple years back, I had been primarily training in CrossFit for good several couple years, and I had never done, like you mentioned, any sort of lengthy endurance I guess like race or event. Never challenged myself in that respect, and it had always been something that I wanted to, again, check off that list of mine. And my buddy Riley, shout out Riley if you're listening, he had done a marathon just about a year or two prior to my completing in one, and we were just hanging out, and again, hearing his story, I was like, dude, I just got to do this. I got to sign up for this. So signed up for Twin Cities Marathon, picked a just generic kind of program. A lot of you guys are going to probably recognize this one if you've ran them before, but like a Hal Higdon, and just picked the program. I set the date, and then there was no questions after that. It was like, okay, I signed up for this. Training starts on Monday. You're showing up on Monday and you're running your 3 miles or whatever. Like, you're allocating the time to this. You're going to make this, become a reality. And then it was just a matter of sticking with the program, running my miles on days that I didn't even want to do it, showing up for yourself day in and day out. And then before I knew it, I found myself there in, the Twin Cities Corral in a nice crisp October morning and staring at the starting line. I'm like, oh shit, like we're just about to do this. We're about to partake in something that for several months leading up to it, you were envisioning where you were in that moment. I'm like, I'm just about to start on this 26.2 mile long race, this 26.2 miles where I'm going to be able to sit and reflect and challenge and, pursue a dream that I had to completing that marathon. And that's a fun stage. It's an exciting stage. It's a very nerve-wracking stage to be in because how many people don't experience that? So that was something I was very much looking forward to, getting up to that starting line.
Mm-hmm. Was there a time that you were going through your race and you were doing or rather like the training prior, and you just thought, it's fucking done? Like, if we're ever just like, man, this sucks. Like, I'm gonna quit. Nope. Really? Wow.
Nope. So I will say at the time, not pertaining to the running, I knew when I signed up, I was like, I was going to get that done. Mm-hmm. Like that wasn't a question. But at the time I was training CrossFit 5 days a week. I had also had just been doing jiu-jitsu for a couple months leading up to that. And then I also added on the marathon training. So I will say that a couple months into my marathon training, still doing CrossFit. So my schedule was this. It was CrossFit Monday through Friday. It was jiu-jitsu on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. So 2-a-days there, right? CrossFit in the morning, jiu-jitsu at night on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that was my marathon training runs. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those were 2-a-days, CrossFit in the morning, marathon run generally in the afternoon. And then Saturdays were solely scheduled for my marathon runs because those were generally the longer of the runs that I would be building up to. And several months into that, I realized that was just an absurd amount of volume that I
Yeah,
could
we
not
need
handle.
to rename this podcast because it's not the Average Bros Gym
That was
podcast. It's the above average Bros Gym podcast.
yeah, that was a lot. And so I will say I didn't. There was never a doubt that I was going to continue pursuing the marathon training. But I will say that once I was a couple months in there, I did put jujitsu on hold. And I was like, I can't. That's not my main priority right now. And I'm willing to sacrifice that aspect of my growth in sport in jujitsu for my pursuit in completing my marathon. So I did have to cut that out, but there was never a doubt in my mind where I was like, I'm going to do this marathon. It was, showing up. That's not to say on some of those longer runs, though, when you're getting up into the, 15, 18-mile long days and your body's starting to feel it a little bit and you got a joint, a knee or a hip that's, flaring up a little bit. There's plenty of times when you're on those long training runs, 2.5 hours in, and you're recognizing, all right, this is like you're gonna experience some hardships. You're gonna experience some bumps in the road, not only just during those training sessions, but then also probably on marathon day itself. It's not gonna be just a clean run more often than not. And yeah, I will say though those times got tough, but those were the ones that you learned most about yourself. Like, are you going to be the one that's just going to phone it in right now, or is that like a little ache or pain something that you can kind of push through a little bit right now?
Did you just listen to podcasts or music? Well, what did you listen to?
That was the biggest one. I didn't listen to music. Not very often. I was listening to motivational mixes a lot. So it'd be some beat that's going on, and then it would be a mix that was thrown together, and it was just iconic speeches, athletes and individuals who I greatly admired. So you'd hear the David Goggins of the world, Jocko, The Rock. I mean, it could be anybody. And I would have these couple mixes that I would listen to about like 2 hours long. I could, if I played them right now, I could damn near recite them like word for word because of how often that I listen to it. And like you're thinking about the things that they're saying and like going through hardships, going through struggles, coming out on the other side, and how much they learned from that, how much they grew from that. That was just like my fucking fuel, that I'm just putting that input in my head, when so often like I feel like if it was just maybe music, you're not listening to yourself, like you're gonna let those little inner demons in your mind tell you to be like, yeah, slow down, no, cut it off here, like no, you've ran enough today. And it's really hard when all of a sudden you're listening to those individuals, going through the headphone and into the ear, that are telling you like, hey, you're gonna struggle here. They're telling you a story. They're telling them a self experience that they've gone through. Like that fires you up, and like, all right, I can keep putting another step forward. Like they did it, I can fucking do it. There's nothing different between what they did and where I'm at. Like they're human. They put on their socks and pants just like everybody else. Like if they were able to achieve that, I sure as shit can. I just got to make sure that I'm not quitting on myself.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of motivational mixes that got me through, like some of those longer runs. Some went great, others, yeah, you gotta kind of got to dig deep a little bit.
Dig deep a little bit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like, I mean, and that goes for the little motivation piece. Do you feel like that people respond well to that like motivation mix? Like that could just be a you thing for sure, but like, I mean, like, is that, in your perspective, is that really helpful for people to listen to, these audiobooks or whatever that's going to like help them motivate? Like what do you think?
I mean, I think you can draw a lot of inspiration and motivation from a lot of things. Some of the days I was just excited to get out because it was a beautiful day. It was perfect weather and the sun was out and it's just clear blue skies, and I had a new trail and a new route that I was going to go on that day, and that got me fired up. Like that was enough to draw off that day. Other days it would be like, all right, I'm going to have to go to the well on this one. I'm going to pull up that mix again because I need to draw something from some other place, like not just on like the intrinsic day where I'm like, oh, it's a beautiful day for a run, like let's get out, body's feeling great. Then I would have to go to the mixes. Maybe it's a new song that you found that you just really vibe to and you like hearing that beat, and you could try to keep with that tempo. There was some times where I had somebody else that would do my runs with me, and having that person to come alongside me was enough kind of fuel to go. Some people, they might listen to a certain motivational mix and just find it corny and stupid, and they're like, "Why? I don't really vibe with this."
There's one thing. So when I like, there have been times where I've been like weightlifting, and I remember this video, and it's C.T. Fletcher.
Oh yeah,
it's Kai Green, and Dana Lynn Bailey,
That's it.
And I believe it's I Command You to Grow Part 2.
Yeah.
And it is the most hype thing in the history of the world. And it's just C.T. Fletcher lifting weights with Kyrie and Dalen Bailey. And Kyrie and Dalen Bailey, very famous bodybuilders. C.T. Fletcher, kind of that realm as well, but I think he's been more of like a coach and things like that. But he's had a lot of like health issues that kind of I think derailed some of his career. But he was around for quite a long time. But it's basically him like yelling at Kyrie, like he's just laughing at the pain. Like he says one thing, it's like pain is a friend of mine. Like I'm acquainted with that motherfucker. I'm like God. Like, every time I hear that, I'm just like, oh my God. And he's just at one point they're doing curls and he's just yelling curl, 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 and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. For whatever reason, I don't know, it gets me hyped up.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean, so I think you gotta find your thing, but there's no reason why those things can't really kind of get you motivated and moving. So
And you need to draw on those. Like there was times where I would listen to or pull up like clips from some of my favorite movies. You know, it could be like the any given Sunday speech. It could be like a Friday Night Lights speech.
we're gonna do an episode on those speeches, just
And
FYI.
yeah, and again, like while I'm watching, like I'm getting goosebumps right now,
Yeah.
like thinking about the impact that those words can have on a locker room, can have on an athlete, can have on an individual, that can really resonate with you, and again, give you that push that you might need in that moment. Again, but at the same time, you're gonna have to draw within your own well, and I think that again, level of input that you got to think about what are the things that you're listening to, what are the things that you're watching. You're going to have that circuitry logged into your brain, and when all of a sudden those tough moments do arise, I can call back immediately those speeches, those words, those sayings, those phrases to be able to get me through some of those difficulties and hardships. But if you're just sitting there and you're just like your audio input is just like, for lack of a better term, just like garbage, like you're not watching you know, documentaries. You're like rewatching some TV show for the 18th fucking time. You're
Hey,
not
we had a lot of Office watchers here, damn it.
And there is that too. There is that too. But like, how many times like are you?
How many times have you watched The Office, Kory?
Once all the way through.
Oh my God,
Once
really?
all the way through.
That actually surprises me.
Yeah,
I would have thought you had more.
But yeah, and it's just like I could have been. But yeah, like what are you inputting in? What are you listening to via like podcasts? What are you listening to educate yourself? Are you reading, or are you just sitting there kind of like repeating the same day over and over and over? I think if that's the case, then you might all of a sudden face some of those adversities or those struggles, and it's like, what are you going to be able to rely on in those moments? Like continue to grow, continue to push, continue to challenge yourself, and then you keep showing up like that, you keep putting that brick in place. I mean, then it becomes, I don't want to say like routine, but like you just become much more hardened and much more disciplined, and those little trials and tribulations, like they don't phase you as much. You view them as an opportunity to grow, as a just like immovable wall that you maybe have had used to
Sure.
Just run into.
So besides your training volume, as someone who didn't really run before as frequently or as like long durations as like a quote unquote runner, like a marathon runner would, kind of what was the hardest part about training for you, apart from like the overall like volume of your jiu-jitsu and like CrossFit stuff?
Yeah, that was definitely the most challenging aspect for sure, was obviously the volume. I think, well, so this will be an area of something that I've not actually talked about with a lot of individuals. The most challenging aspect of that marathon training and of that process was actually something that was very easily hidden from a lot of people. A lot of people would have seen me at the time, doing 12, 15-mile runs in the weekends, hitting up CrossFit, almost like this epitome of, I don't know, like health and fitness. And what a lot of people don't know is that over the course of that time, I was struggling very much with a eating disorder at the time. And that was by far and away the most challenging part. The volume was in and of itself, but and this is, like I said, something that not a lot of people know. I think we might have even had a conversation at one point in time where I maybe had like hinted at it. And so going back to when I first initially started, I had just gotten out of a relationship and wasn't necessarily like proud of some of the just decisions that I had made and like how things ultimately like ended between her and I. And so I wanted at that time, I think this was an aspect as to why I wanted to get into the marathon as well, just to, again, just pour all my energy and focus into this goal that I wanted to set out for myself. Like, and then again, knowing that I was going to spend a lot of time with myself on those runs was something I was seeking out. And so it would have been, this all would have been kind of like right around the same time that I started my marathon training. But post breakup, I remember one of my favorite things to do was like on a Friday night after like a long work week, I would go and get it was a DiGiorno pizza, good solid 3 meat, and I would get a 3 meat pizza. Oh, for sure. Pepperoni.
DiGiorno is the shit.
It is good.
Yeah.
It is good. But it was always like DiGiorno was the shit, and that it was like my kind of little treat to myself.
Sure.
At the end of the week. It was like, all right, cool, good solid like training weekend, work week, awesome. You get to look forward to the weekend, and I would always look forward to that. Like going back home, I was gonna have like a DiGiorno pizza, and then my favorite dessert was chocolate chip cookies. Still is to this day. Chocolate chip cookies, warm, fresh out of the oven, cold glass of milk. You can't beat it. And I remember one night getting back, popped in the pizza, ate the whole thing like I typically would, because I was, again, at the time working out a lot, so I was like, all right, this is just fun. It's a good meal, get a good amount of calories in. And I had some of the cookies and stuff as well. And then at the time I felt like I was obviously just gorged, so full. And I had this thought of like, well, that was fucking stupid. Like, why did you just down all this? Like, now you kind of feel like shit. Is this going to detract from my training or whatever kind of thoughts were going on? I just wasn't proud all of a sudden of myself in that moment for like what I had done in terms of like just eating all this, kind of in my mind at that time, just like garbage and how that's going to impact my training and everything else. And I wandered over to the, bathroom, and before I knew it, I found my head was in the toilet and I just threw up everything that I just had. And I'm sitting there just like watching this all spiral down, after I flushed it. And I'd look at myself in the mirror and it was just like, what the fuck? Like, what was that? Like, that's not happening again, right? Like, that was it. That was just a one-off, right? Before I knew it, fast forward, like, next weekend, I find myself doing the same thing. I was like, all right, that's it, though. That's it. You're not doing that again. You're like, dude, like, I'm looking at myself in the bathroom mirror after doing it again and telling myself like, that's it. You got a marathon you're training for here, dude. Like, you're better than that. Like, all of those things. And before I knew it, my feet were just on a slippery fucking slope that I did not expect to last as long as it did. And so the most challenging aspect of that marathon training was the fact that I was going through a eating disorder at the time. A week prior to my marathon, I was still gorging, purging, and suffering from bulimia, essentially at that time. And that was something that nobody knew about. I mean, I think even to this day, for anybody listening right now, prior to this, which I'm very comfortable talking about now, this is something that I've had to work through, and now thankfully for a long while have now moved and grown past that. But I just wanted to kind of take this opportunity because you posed the question that some of the individuals in your life that you might feel as though are excelling in health and fitness and you might think are like the epitome of health and fitness, like they also could be struggling just as you might perceive yourself to be. So yeah, going through that, taking those times on those long runs, going through the eating disorder at the time, that was for sure the most challenging aspect.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that. That's really appreciated. Obviously, and you said you've worked through it, but at the same time, it's always kind of tough to talk about too, because if you think about yourself in that moment, and you think about how vulnerable you were in that moment, and that's tough to talk about a lot. I think in cases like that, you do it once and you kind of get away with it. right? Like nothing really bad happens because it's a one-off thing, or it's like a very small sample size, right? So it's like, yeah, I think this goes for a lot of times, like people, like if people like drive like drunk or like drive under the influence, like, okay, they're only going to crash, so like they get home safe. Okay, well that that means that they kind of have that idea, like, oh, I could do this, or maybe they'll say the same thing, I will never do this again.
Yeah.
But then they do it again because they didn't get hurt, nothing happened. And it might have been the same thing with you. It's like, okay, well, maybe like maybe no one found out. Like, your body was fine.
Yeah, well.
Well, yeah, at the time.
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Oh, yeah, like the one-off.
Yeah, the one-off, right?
Yep,
yeah, you didn't
yep.
feel any adverse side effects, and so that
Yeah.
makes it easier to then do again and again. We had Ellen Rank on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Great episode. Go listen to that.
Great episode.
It
Go
was.
listen to it.
It
I
was.
believe episode 6. And, she discussed kind of the way that therapists put it for her was like that sledding down a hill, where it's like you sled down that hill that one time, then you've got this nice smooth snow, and then you keep going, and it gets slicker and slicker and slicker, so it makes it easier and easier to do that. And now how hard is it to wire your brain to go down a different path? And so for you, it was like, I mean, you said you were doing it all the way up until like the week prior
Oh, yeah.
to that marathon.
Oh, yeah.
How did that affect? I mean, you just not even just mentally, but like physically, like mentally more so than physically for sure, but both, I guess.
Yeah, it was a mental, emotional, physical war that was going on for. I mean, we're talking the marathon training in and of itself was roughly like 4 to 6 months. The eating disorder was a little over a year in time. Cumulatively, like from what I can recall, it's not like a specific day. It's like, oh, started then.
Yeah, you were doing like week by week by week by week.
Yeah, it wasn't something I was logging, but again, like roughly in that roughly in that time. And so, I mean, mentally, the hardships of questioning yourself and questioning like at the core of my identity, like who do I define? I'm sitting here on this like platform or this stage, as a coach, and who I identify as is, leading other individuals towards health and fitness. And meanwhile, I just felt like a fucking fraud. Like I'm sitting here like telling these people like, hey, I would recommend do this. Like, hey, talk about, like, hey, relationship with your food is a big thing. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there like the night prior with my head down the fucking toilet again. And it's like, what a hypocrite. Maybe not hypocrite, but, just again, how am I supposed to sit there, look at somebody else that's across from me and, try to give them health and fitness and life advice when I can barely stand on my own 2 feet in that same respect, which in hindsight now, going through what I did has taught me so much about just, again, psychologically the impact that goes on in meeting people with where they are and the hardships that they might be facing or that you might not even be aware that they're facing. Because again, nobody knew that I was going through this at the time. So yeah, like mentally, basically just like I guess you'd call it like a quarter life crisis. Like, who am I and where's my identity and where is this like leading to? Like, are you just going to be sitting here as like the victim, or are we going to be able to, grow because of this? Like, what are you going to be able to learn? And when is it going to be that pivot where you finally put your foot down and be like, this is not me. This is not who I am. This is not what I value. And this is not going to be the person I'm going to become. Emotionally, I felt very withdrawn a little bit. I think to anybody else, my friends and family, they didn't like have any idea per se. Because again, outwardly I could just be my happily bubbly golden retriever self. But, when I got back and it was, being a little bit more, just into myself and I don't want to say like withdrawn, but just, all right, I kind of put on the face for a little bit, but I'm feeling beat because physically I was fucked up. I was, again, training some of those days, 2-a-days on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I was still doing my CrossFit because I love that. And I set out for myself that I was going to do this marathon, and I'll be damned if, eating disorder or not, I was fucking getting that done. I was not going to give up on myself in that respect. And that's one of the things that got me through, because going through those long training runs, that's when I was really able to process and digest, for lack of a better term, what was going on in my life. And, so physically, yeah, I was beat. I was, again, binging, purging, sometimes like multiple times a day. It was bad. I was in a very dark place that a lot of people don't aren't aware of, like the severity, I think, of like actually like where things had gotten to. I mean, yeah. So physically just beat up, and I mean, even like I said, leading up a week prior to marathon day, and that instance like happened again, but still being able to persevere and show up for myself, being there on marathon day to be able to like finish what I had set my mind to, like that proved so much to myself of like what I was capable of, and that like I could overcome hardship, I could overcome struggle, like showing up for myself day in and day out on those training days, proving to myself that I could get that done. By the time I crossed the finish line in October, did the 26.2, that was where I finally felt like I was over the hump. I was over the hurdle. Like the hardest part was now behind me. Not to say that there weren't still instances post marathon where I still struggled and had instances of again binging and purging, but it was in that moment that I felt like I really took a turn and finally had a clear cut vision as to who I wanted to become, what I valued, and what I stood and represented for, and that I was going to grow from this. Ultimately, was upon finishing that marathon. So not only was it a event that I wanted to do just to prove to myself that I could run 26.2 miles and do something that most people hadn't, but it was proving to myself that I could overcome those demons that were going on inside my brain. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of that actually, you know what I mean? I don't know how much of that we've actually, like I said, talked about at the time. I only brought it up to literally a handful of people, Abby being one of them, who we're going to have on the podcast. Abby, shout out if you're listening. She is a beautiful, what is it, triple Leo or something like that?
Leo. Imagine that shit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Even over the fact that we don't know, but you might.
But yeah, she was somebody who, I was able to find, kind of comfort in, and all being in a space where I could fill her in on that aspect of my life. Like I said, I think we had at one point in time, I brought it up to you. I don't even know if you remember
told
this, to
me,
be honest. We were out actually at, what was the name of the spot?
Because I thought you told me when we were at the CrossFit Games.
Ooh.
That was when we were, that was when we went to go see the 2021? 2?
I'm
no.
so shitty with years.
It was I think it was 2, because Ellen wasn't competing.
No. Yeah.
No, because we would have been lit if Ellen was competing.
Yeah.
Because Ellen did 2021. So I think it was 2022. Because that was when Kory and I would watch the Lord of the Rings.
Might have been my favorite day from the entire weekend.
Every time we came back from an event, we just threw on the Lord of the Rings. And we ended up watching, we almost finished all 3 of them throughout the weekend, throughout the 4 days.
Did we not?
We had like a little bit left of Return of the King.
So for anybody that the CrossFit Games, they go over the course of a weekend. We had arrived in Madison, Wisconsin on...
We got there like...
Was it Friday?
No, because like... So
Thursday?
Because as it got bigger, they just kept adding more days.
Yeah.
So I think we got there Wednesday night, and it was like, they started on Thursday.
Okay.
And so then we were there like Thursday through Sunday. I think we left Sunday.
Yeah.
After like the last event or something, whatever that was.
Because we were at an Airbnb that we had rented out for the weekend, and we were within
the nicest woman.
She was so sweet.
So kind.
We were just chilling in her basement, which was nice and AC'd.
Oh God, it was like a grandmother.
It was great.
So sweet,
so wholesome.
Yeah.
But we were like 15 maybe minutes from the
quick drive
from the complex, where the games were held, and so we had gone, Thursday, Friday. And at Madison, Wisconsin, at that time, it was a fairly hotter weekend for sure.
It was, I think, one of the hotter ones they'd had.
Yeah,
it was a fucking scorcher. Like even the day, I think that Saturday it was raining, and even that day was still like a 90 something.
Yep. So it was one of those days like Friday or Saturday where we looked at the event list, and one of the first events in the morning was actually at a pool that you couldn't even go to unless you had a different ticket of some sort. Like you had to be in a tier to be able to.
Wisconsin pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was that event in the morning, and then there was a couple more that were in the afternoon, and we looked at the weather report, and it was just like, dude, fuck, it is supposed to be hot as shit and muggy and sticky. Mm-hmm. And then that entire day, we just kind of like were sitting on the couch, like trying to plan out our day, and I just remember us like sitting there and be like, do you want to just like chill and just like watch the games here? We could throw on Lord of the Rings like in between. And we like, I'm pretty sure that day until the night event, that was the first event that we went to. That it was the only event we went to that day, but all the other ones we just chilled in her basement and just like threw on CrossFit games, and then when the event was over, we'd flip it over to Lord of the Rings.
We went and
chill.
We went and got coffee at this cool little coffee place. That was a really cool coffee spot.
Yes.
We came back and we'd have like the game streaming, and then the event would be over, and like, all right, time for Lord of the Rings. We just go back and forth. And we ended up through the whole weekend. We almost finished all 3 episodes.
Phenomenal
just
series.
doing it like that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Man. But yeah, that's when I think I remember. That's the first time I remember us talking about it. We didn't go into super detail. God, what the fuck? We didn't go into super detail. We just went into normal detail about it. So I mean, like, there's stuff in that story that I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's something where I'm again very comfortable talking about it, but it isn't necessarily like a regular topic of conversation that just gets brought up.
Hey, Kory, you remember that time? Like, yeah.
But I knew we were planning on revisiting, this topic, and I remember just even these last like couple of days kind of thinking about it, because knowing that we were going to broach this topic of conversation again, that being like the marathon and training and whatnot, that was definitely one aspect that I wanted to bring up, just because I think, again, it is so critical to recognize that, again, anybody in your life, regardless of like what they present to you and who you maybe perceive them to be, this happy, jovial, go lucky individual that maybe looks like they have all their shit together. It's like everyone is, got something. Everyone's got a little inner demon. Everyone's battling. Everyone's struggling with something. And it is so important to recognize that within another human being that's like sitting across from you. It's so easy to just let our, tempers flare, our emotions run hot, but it's like, recognizing that we all are going through something at the same time. I think that just allows you to approach relationships so differently, that, again, having this opportunity to be able to talk about this, for those that are listening, I think is really important. I remember like when Robin Williams passed away, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, here's this epitome of just laughter and joy and happiness, and like meanwhile, you had no idea what was going on like behind the scenes. So again, training for a marathon, outward exterior, dude's fucking killing it, crushing his paces. He's a coach, got all of his shit together, and meanwhile, for everybody, again, friends and family included, some of the people that are closest to me had, again, no idea. So I think that's important. Again, check in on your friends, check in on your family, even the ones that you think are, got it all together. Just being there, I think, was definitely something I wanted to be able to talk about. So appreciate the, at least, chance to be able to break that down a little bit.
And it's part of the reason why we have this podcast.
Yeah, honestly yes. Yeah.
I think when we both started this, it was because we felt like we had things to say. And I think that this is one of those things, and more. And as much as we shoot the shit, which is, I think, probably one of the reasons that people really like this podcast. It's also,
Go. Sorry.
It's very important to touch on based on other things, especially the things that, people might not talk about enough, right?
Yeah.
So, that being said, man, that's a pretty fucking good way to end. I think this episode of the Average Bros Gym podcast. Are those your final thoughts, or do you have more final thoughts?
No, that would, I guess, be probably a good way to just wrap that up there. Because again, regardless of, those individuals and friends and family alike, coworkers, again, recognize that we all, we're all human. We all have our trials and tribulations that we're going through, some of which people are going to be open and willing to discuss and talk about, and some of those inner battles and little inner demons that we're all facing, sometimes they're very easily hid. And again, being there for those people, and asking those questions, and how they're doing and being there for them can be so incredibly important. Like if I didn't have that solid foundation of family, solid foundation of friends to whom I could find that support with, and that just outward expression of love and empathy, that definitely made things easier, to be able to claw myself out of that little slippery slope that I again had, kind of found my feet on. So yeah, checking on your friends, checking on your family.
Perfect. Well, great way to end the episode. In fact, I'm going to give you some applause. There we go. We can't hear it, but it's playing. So anyways, friends, that will do it for us on the Average Bros Gym podcast. Thank you for listening to the brand new and improved audio quality of the Average Bros Gym podcast. You can email us at averagebrosgympodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at Average Bros Gym Podcast, as well as X/Twitter, although we don't tweet that much because, man, fucking Twitter, what the fuck?
Can't even call it a tweet. Is it a tweet? Sending X.
Is that what it's called? It sounds like you're doing drugs.
Everyone still calls it Twitter.
It sounds like ecstasy. Sending an X. That sounds like you're at a show.
It does.
So send us an X at Average Bros, AVG Bros Gym Pod. Maybe follow us. Maybe we'll do some more tweets. Yeah. It's like 4 followers. I'm like, I don't know. Anyways, friends, I hope you're having a great day, and we will talk very soon. Did I do anything else for the send-off? Is that it?
Yeah, you pretty much.
Please reach out.
The send-off was a lot better than the intro. Yeah.
Did I do a better job? Please reach out. We're always here, and we'll talk soon. And we're gonna, as I reach over to turn this recording device off, we're gonna just let the music carry us.